There are, of course, some amusing things about the church, especially since they're not even entirely church related. The church has long been a player on Putin's team. It's been pure politics for quite some time now. Well, we understand that the Russian Orthodox Church is once again in dire need of a straitjacket. Back in the USSR, the Soviet Union once tailored a strong, paralyzing cocoon for the church, and in it, only one opening was left for an enema. And I have to say that outfit really suited the Russian Orthodox Church. It had no opportunity to speak nonsense, and I must say, it got used to the enemas rather quickly, even sticking out its backside in anticipation of the next dose of gentle persecution or scolding from the officials in charge of religious affairs. There were such characters. The turbulent 90s, alas, tore open the straitjacket and set the beast free. The word beast in this case is not an insult, not a curse, but a completely legitimate philosophical term. This is a term for the church introduced into academic usage by Mr. Voltaire, who called it nothing else his famous slogan, "Crush the beast," was, is, and will remain a hit. In short, what crawled out of the tattered straitjacket was a filthy, brazen, and very aggressive creature. Of course, nowadays, the Russian authorities neither have the means nor the slightest desire to pack it back up in the Soviet style. That's why the church has completely lost all restraint and is behaving more brazenly with each passing day. This is wonderful because watching the clergy's lawlessness destroys any remaining illusions about orthodoxy and the other foundations of the Russian world. But now the church has started to want the golden fish itself, so to speak. It has declared Ivan Kupaladai, a very old, cheerful Slavic folk holiday, to be a threat to the foundations of the state system. And the church has called for Russians to be imprisoned for celebrating Ivan Kupala Day. Moreover, you understand that Gundiev is really getting worked up about this. After the Russian Orthodox Church had already stamped out the magicians, astrologers, and crystal interpreters, the ROC thought that when it came to the business of selling magical services, it had already eliminated all of its competitors. But the church didn't get to enjoy its role as the monopoly swindler for long. The fangs are yellow, but strong. The fangs of old native Russian paganism. The fangs of Uncle Perun, Dashbog, and Svarog. Of course, they sank their teeth into the priests' behinds from below, making the patriarchate scream in pain, hurl insults, and act rudely and foolishly. The established priests are terribly dismayed by the significant revival, especially within the military, particularly in the National Guard, and most notably in the security forces of ancient Slavic paganism, a belief system with deep historical roots. And here it must be said that the Gundiev conglomerate certainly has reason to tremble, because the ancient Jewish god Jesus, in fair competition, at least from the perspective of today's youth, who are searching for their own religiosity, of course, Jesus pales in comparison to the Slavic gods. And it's worth remembering that, in general, sooner or later, everyone gets to the extremely unpleasant truths that the ancient Jewish God of the Russian Orthodox Church was, in fact, hammered into the ancient Russian minds with the backs of axes, driven in with swords, and forced in with whips. The so-called baptism of Russes was, in style, an exceptionally crude procedure of introducing Christianity by force and violence. 100%, not 99, but 100%. And I'll explain everything. Now, the people being baptized that year had absolutely no idea, none at all, who this Jesus was or what this new God was about. They had not the slightest understanding of the faith they were supposedly accepting under pressure and by order of the authorities. And it must be said that, indeed, this is absolutely true. The whole story is actually quite amusing. So, Prince Vladimir, at that time, let me briefly tell you, was, of course, quite a character. He was, of course, like many other saints of the Russian Orthodox Church, a serial rapist and a serial killer. The current legal system of the Russian Federation could only offer Prince Vladimir a life sentence and the title of especially dangerous repeat offender, sexual maniac, and serial killer, his name, would be listed alongside Gacy, Chikatilo, and Jack the Ripper. He really, really was a monster. And having apparently contracted, judging by the symptoms, chlamydial conjunctivitis somewhere, the old rapist Vladimir decided that he had gone blind for the rest of his life and would now be doomed to blindly rape God knows whom forever. Whoever they bring to him, and after all, they could bring anyone. Bald ones, crooked ones, cross-eyed ones, and let me remind you, there were no rubber ones back then. That must have been an unbearable prospect for Vladimir. Just imagine the feelings of a serial rapist who was used to being picky about choosing his victims. And this prospect of having to do all of that blindly, of course, made his life absolutely miserable. He tried all the local methods of healing and turned to the Byzantine sorcerers, those very Christians, in the hope of some magical just out of desperationem, the hope of the magical power of their magic. He underwent some kind of baptism that he didn't understand, and he truly couldn't grasp its meaning. Why? The fact is, even to become familiar with the basics, let alone all the dogmas, postulates, and decisions of the ecumenical councils, Vladimir simply could not, no matter how much he wanted to, become acquainted with the fundamentals of the Christian faith. He also couldn't understand what it was all about. The prince didn't know a single word of either Latin or Greek, and the first translation of the gospel into the Slavic language, a partial translation, known as the Ostromir Gospel, was made only 50 years after Vladimir's death. And even then, it wasn't the gospel in the form you're familiar with, the 4 ancient Hebrew tales about the adventures of Rabbi Jesus, which at least have some kind of plot. Instead, it was what's called an aprikos. An aprikos is a purely liturgical book in which all the episodes are mixed up and rearranged according to the dates they are read in church. By the way, as is well known, Vladimir couldn't read or write in Russian either. His conjunctivitis went away, and based on the fact that his conjunctivitis naturally cleared up, he respected the new magic and promptly returned to practicing violence. But you see, this story would have remained his own private affair. He would have simply forgotten over time that he had been baptized and what it even meant if he hadn't suddenly run out of local girls. Yes. And the Byzantine priests who knew about the sweetness of the Russian barbarian immediately offered him Princess Anna as a wife. Princess Anafer was really nowhere to put her in all of Byzantium. As for Anna herself, well, she was a little thing, a nobody, nothing interesting, nothing particularly enticing about her. But the average Byzantine princess had a staff of about 100 virgin attendants, and they promised to throw them in as part of the package with Anna. And here, of course, Vladimir couldn't resist and made this remarkable exchange. He baptized about 80% of the population, and in return, they supplied him with the girls. That's basically how it all happened.